Hello, friends, and welcome to the show this week. I'm Joe.
I'm Fiorelise, and this is the Esoterics Podcast.
Hello, friend. What is new in your world?
Oh, not too much. Just enjoying some rainy weather out here in California.
It doesn't
So,
rain a lot there.
no, not at all. And it shows because nobody knows how to fucking drive.
Okay, so what does that mean? How are they? Are they
Uh, like the people
crashing?
just speed through, and like I saw like a guy ran a stop sign next to me this morning, and just excess stuff where it's like you wouldn't drive like that in regular conditions. Why would you drive like that now? So.
Now, did he run the stop sign because he was hydroplaning or something?
No, just because he's being a dick.
Oh, well,
And you know, like how I assume that it's a guy. So
right.
it could
Well,
have
it
been
was. We
anybody. I
already
don't
know it
know.
was. So they're out of their element in the when it's not sunny
Yeah,
and
I feel like
gorgeous.
there's two types of drivers out here when it rains. It's one who drives extra slow, extra careful, which I understand.
Yeah.
I'm okay, I get it. And then there's the one who thinks that they can just drive through the rain really, really fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those are the ones that basically put everybody else in danger. So they're
Right.
just awful.
So that was there was during a rainstorm when I was in Phoenix, and
Hmm.
everybody was like, "You have to drive slow. You have to drive slow," because the water pools on the road because there's no runoff because it's like a
Mm.
rock, whereas like in
Mm.
Michigan it's like soil and dirt and
Oh, it gets absorbed. Uh-huh.
yes, and so that's the difference. And I mean, I'm a careful driver, I think, anyway. I mean, I drive fast, but I'm
Yeah,
also not stupid. So when the driving
exactly.
conditions are questionable, I, you know, become aware and mindful and all that stuff. So,
Mm-hmm.
so
Yep. Yep. How are you doing on Christmas shopping and all that?
I don't have a ton of people to shop for. I made gifts for my nieces and a couple other people. Um, and I just give my nephew money because he loves money.
Yeah.
Plus he's like a 20 something year old male, like, you know, who
It's
knows
hard to
what he
shop for
wants, a t-shirt or
underwear.
underwear, socks, right? But it's like, all right, well, he's my nephew. He gives like the
Yeah.
best bear hugs. Like the last thing I want to get him is, stuff that's boring. That's, like
Yeah.
t-shirts and socks and stuff. His mom can get him that. So,
Right. Right.
so I would like to get him something. I would have liked to have made him a piece of jewelry, but I don't know if he'll wear it, or so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I did go Christmas shopping for the first time because I didn't do any Christmas shopping last year,
Uh-huh.
and that was interesting. It was pouring out rain, pouring down rain. So
Yeah.
it's weird because there's no snow here, but it still feels Christmassy. But it's
Mm.
just different. It's just a different feeling.
Yeah.
A Michigan Christmas.
Yeah.
But of course I'm the like I hate snow. Snow sucks. So I can't have it both ways.
Right. Yeah. And I like snow, but I don't think I would enjoy living in it. So I'm with you.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. That's what it is, right? It's no fun to live in. Like seriously, like
Mm-hmm.
it clumps on your shoes and you track in salt everywhere and it's dirty and it's cold and it's wet
Yep.
and it gets those boogers under your car and then your car in the winter
Yeah.
because it builds up in your car because it never gets cold enough. So you get in your car, there's like 4 inches of snow in there, not
Mm-hmm.
really, but there's still ice in your car that,
Mm-hmm.
and it's wet in your, I could just go
Yeah.
on and on and on
Yeah.
why I dislike living in snowy regions.
You can't just walk out and just go on about your day. You have to deal with it, which is just an extra thing
It,
to deal with.
yes, in the
Yeah.
winter, I just want to go check the mail, right? In the summer,
Uh-huh.
you throw on flip-flops or you do it
Sure.
barefoot.
Sure.
Not in the winter, not in the
Mm-mm.
snow. You got to put on some sort of foot covering and maybe
Yeah.
a coat. And yeah, it's just a lot. Uh I
I'm
know
with
some
you.
people love it, but I am not one of those people.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why we only made it a few months in Nebraska.
Yeah.
'Cause
That's right.
my
You
parents were
lived
like,
there.
nope. Mm-hmm. My parents were like, nope.
Yes. We're out of
The
here.
yeah, basically what happened was one day my dad was he left the apartment to go to work and he walked outside and he slipped on ice and he was like, "Nope." And he walked back in. He's like, "We're moving back." That was
He
it.
did. That's all it took. He's like, fuck this.
Basically, yep.
Oh, that's hilarious. Seriously. Okay, and have you ever fallen on ice? Have you ever slipped and
Yeah,
fallen?
it's scary.
Oh my god. And I do it all the time. There was this one, my friends have this thing called Isapalooza. Every year they're a band, they play on this frozen lake up north. Um and it's actually really freaking cool. It is such a
Mhm.
fun event. Um but every stinking year, no matter how much traction boots I wear
Yeah.
with traction, I always get drunk and fall on the ice. And granted, the problem is the alcohol. It's not my, but it's like, it's so stupid to fall and slip on ice because
It
it
sucks.
hurts
Yeah.
and it's completely avoidable. But
Note to self.
mm-mm,
Do not do not drink around icy conditions.
no, which is actually really fun, because I mean, I grew up, riding snowmobiles and quads and going up north and camping and doing all of those things. Like when my parents were partiers when we were really young, they would get like 20 of their friends together and they would all have snowmobiles and they would, back in the day when there was
Mhm.
zero to little thought for child safety or whatever, throw the kids on the back and they would bar hop at like these
Oh my
old
god.
little uptown or up north little bars.
Uh-huh.
It was the best time. It was so much fun. Kids loved it, right? Because we could be up till doing whatever the hell, and the parents
Yeah.
were progressively drunker. They didn't. Kids go play ping pong or video game
Oh my
pinball.
gosh.
Um, and that's the fun part of living in the snow. But anything
Overall,
else is not.
it's a lot of work.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm done. I'm almost done with my Christmas shopping, but I wanted to do something a little bit different. A couple years ago, I made boxes, like just little, like a small, like a shoe box, and then I added like little things for my friends, and I sent it to a few of my girlfriends, and that were not expecting it. They're just and I just really enjoyed putting that together because I feel like it gives me an opportunity to just kind of be really thoughtful as far as like, what would this person like? What does this person like? What do they enjoy? And so I'm gonna do that on just on a different scale with some of our friends, like our couple friends and
That is
stuff.
such a
So
great idea.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I just like that. I know it's a little bit more work because there's more thought involved, right?
Yeah,
But I feel like overall it's just a more meaningful gift.
right.
Whereas like, oh, here's I don't know, a blanket.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not, it's not as much
Mm-mm.
thought. Although I have received blankets as gifts and
And
I I love blankets too.
blankets
So
are the best.
blankets and socks.
Oh,
So cannot complain. And that's just, that's just an easy gift for someone that you don't know what to buy them for. So
yes, yes. I have
uh,
never received a pair of socks and been upset or sad.
right.
Mm,
Exactly. Yeah.
they're
I love
just the
them all.
best.
Hmm.
Yes. So even in the summer, it's like,
Oh yeah. I'll make use of them all year long.
yeah,
I don't
when
care.
it's like when your central air's on and it's cold, it's like, I need my
Hmm.
socks.
Yep. All right. Do we have any announcements?
I have one, and this is just like a heads up. In January, I'm going to drop an announcement about group intuitive development. A lot of people have been asking about that, and because I was like, I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it, right? But I'm going to actually bring it back. It's going to be once a week. It's going to be for a specific period of time,
Uh huh.
and it's going to be my intuitive development one-on-one coaching program. So it's going to be the same program that you pay hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars for if you want to do it with me one on one. But this one is going to be group and it's going to be much less. So
Oh,
look for
cool.
that announcement. Um, and I'm going to offer it just once. I'm going to see how it goes. If it goes well and people respond and they actually join and show up and do the work and all that stuff, I'll offer it again. But if it's like a shit show, people they don't sign up for it and they don't show up, and it's just a lot of work and nobody
Mhm.
contributes and there's not a
Mhm.
lot of engagement, I'm not going to do it again. So I'm just going to do
Yeah.
this one test, see if it works, and if it does, fantastic. If not, it's time to let it go because that will just make way for something new.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And what about you? Got some announcements?
I've actually felt this drive recently about so okay. My Instagram account was originally like an accountability account regarding like working out and fitness and
Yeah.
all that. And I still like just have that tendency to kind of revert back to it just because that's what I know to use it for. So, I'm working on developing a shadow work class around the body. So, specifically like about the things that, eating habits and even workout habits, discovering like why we may feel like it's difficult or sometimes impossible to stick to a workout routine or even maybe a certain diet or whatever, and just kind of like helping to debunk some stuff about that because I've learned so much about this over the years, like about nutrition and about exercise and just easy things that when you're just getting started, or even if you were once very active and just find yourself like, I can't do this anymore. Just to help get down to the nitty gritty of it. Like, where does this come from? What's stopping me? What are my blockages? Like all this. And so just kind of help to clear out that stuff. So yeah, so I'm going to offer that as a class, probably a recorded class. So yeah, so look up out for that in January as well.
That's very exciting. It's perfect timing. And I,
Hmm.
for one, am extremely interested because that is legitimately my biggest thing. Like, I have a really hard time sticking to something because I get bored. So I'm really interested in that because if I can get to the root of why I get bored with it,
Hmm.
um, you know, um, as soon as I start to show progress, I get bored with it. So that
Yeah,
that has to be shadow.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, so
All
look
right.
out for that.
All right, wonderful. That'll get a lot of support and encouragement and excitement around that one, I'm going to bet, especially in January, right? Because everybody's like, Marie Osmond, she's got to start showing up on our screen 14 times a day with her Nutrisystem commercials.
Right, right. And that's what I like would like to help people move away from, is the idea that you have to buy into these products in order to get where you want to be.
Right.
Because you don't. You
No.
just don't. You don't need. I know it's almost an American thing, right? Of like wanting instant results and wanting a quick fix and
Mm-hmm.
wanting something that works tomorrow. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's fortunately does not work that way, but also allowing ourselves that grace to let that go and let those belief systems die because we don't need them and they're not serving us.
Thank you. I agree. They don't serve us. And then today, in the group, the esoterics group, I posted a meme about infusing, the energy that you eat your food with or that you prepare your food with is
Yes.
infused with the energy of your thoughts.
Yes.
And of course, that took me back to the conversation that you and I are always having about, food and energy and infusing
Uh-huh.
and, you know, um, so
Yeah.
um, wonderful. Good. That's
Yeah.
exciting. So we'll promote that big time.
Mm-hmm.
Talk more about that.
Yeah. All right. So what are we talking about today?
So today, we are going to talk about, well, in episode 32, we talked about the topic of life between life and what happens between incarnations. That was very popular, and people are like, we want to know more, we want to know more. So for this episode, we're going to dive a little deeper into the process of choosing your next human life, your next incarnation.
Okay.
So when I wrote episode 32, I realized that I've never really sought out the details about what specifically that looks like, the process of choosing your next life. And I know that on the other side, that's one of the things that I do. So
Uh-huh.
during our break for the holiday, I specifically opened my Akashic record and asked to look at the process in a detailed manner. And what came through, it was like one of my favorite channels because it was just more like a class. It was crazy. It was
Yeah.
this huge channel that broke it down for us from start to finish. So that's what I thought I would share today. And yeah, so let's get into that.
Mhm.
All right. So, one of the coolest things that I've learned in my work in the Akashic Records, opening up my record and other people's records, is that we all have jobs on the other side, air quotes,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
But it's more important to determine that we learn, we teach, we guide, we build, and we create just like we do as humans.
Okay.
So, in one meditation, I learned that my job on the other side is to guide a soul as they design their next incarnation by helping those earthbound souls examine all aspects of the process of writing their soul blueprints and then guiding them through to completion, which
Uh-huh.
I thought was really cool that I help interpret the soul blueprints as
Right.
Joanna in human form.
Yeah.
Of course, it's like you can't make this stuff up. Um, so as my Akashic record opened for this specific meditation, when I asked for more information, I was shown this crystal column. It's like, just think of this huge crystal column that runs from the floor to the ceiling.
Mhm.
Um, it looked sort of like a giant selenite tower,
Mhm.
but it was more clear.
Okay.
And so this crystal column, it contains the energy of all the potential and possibilities for each for an earth life. It was
Okay.
just like a database, I guess, and it
Okay.
appeared like I said, it looked like a clear quartz, but it had these really cool iridescent flashes in it.
Okay.
Maybe more like a moonstone, maybe.
Okay.
All right. So when it was touched, when we touch it, it connects us to all those potential lives that are available to us based on a couple things. Mostly, though, the karmic lessons meant to be learned for balancing karmic debt and gaining spiritual growth in human experiences. So it's like we reach out as souls and we touch it, and then
Mhm.
it's like scrolling through all these lives, like we're scrolling through our timeline, right, on Instagram or something.
Yeah.
So as we scroll through these lives, like a social media timeline, we see the roles that we could potentially play and the events that we could potentially experience in each available life. So it's as if they say, well, these are like they show you like 5 lives. These are the lives that are available to you to choose from. So you can scroll through, what does that look like at childhood? What does it look like at, young adulthood, old age, that sort of thing.
Uh-huh.
Um, and souls can view how we might fit into a certain environments in future segments, or yeah, in like future time segments. So at this point, right, we're full of hope, we're promise and lofty expectations. We're like, I'm gonna go back to earth and I'm gonna pick like the best life and I'm gonna get so much wisdom, and right. But a lot of times we take on too much, or we think, oh, we're going to give ourselves these really, really hard lives. And that's,
Yeah.
yes. And that's when our guides come in and they're like, slow your roll. Okay. Slow your roll. And then so they give us like that support and wisdom, and help us evaluate the potentials of our new life.
You know what I'm imagining as you're describing this thing? Have you seen Thor?
Uh,
The
I,
movie Thor?
okay. I believe so. I've seen all the Marvel movies, but
Okay. Okay. So, well, then it's in several. It's not just in Thor, but it's in several movies. But the rainbow light bridge
mm,
and the flash of rainbow that comes down when he lands like on different planets or whatever. It's like a clear, like it's obviously like a ray of light or whatever, right? That like shoots down. But that's what it reminds me of, is like this like huge, because the Rainbow Bridge is like this huge like crystal bridge with like iridescence in
Oh,
it. Like
cool.
yeah, rainbow. That's like in my head when you're describing it, like that's what I'm
Okay, I'm
imagining.
gonna have to check it out like the next time because it's always on. There's always some Marvel
Yeah.
marathon on. So, the soul, we want to experience as many different scenarios as possible when it comes to all of these incarnations. We want different families, we want different economic conditions. Sometimes we
Hmm.
want to be poor, sometimes we want to be rich. We want social statuses, we want different spiritual and individual beliefs, all of that. We want something new every single time we choose a new life. Um,
Okay.
and so in episode 32, I talked about how souls use astrology and numerology to sort of pinpoint the most beneficial date, time, and geographic location to be born in, using like the planetary positions, the
Hmm.
lunar phases, the astrological events, all that stuff, because those are the things that are going to help us carry out all of the details of our life's plan. That was also in relation to Vedic astrology, which you actually knew more about than I did, but I just was like, in a channel, I heard it and I'm like, I don't know what that means. Like, I'd
Yeah.
heard it before, but I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And then once I did my research, I was like, oh my God, you can't make this stuff up again. Vedic
Hmm.
astrology is based on our individual karma, and it provides insight into our personal dharma or our life path, and it reveals our innate gifts and challenges. So, and why that came up is because I just got this sense that there. It's a little bit more technical than they're explaining to me, and that's when they brought in Vedic astrology.
Okay.
All right, so that's just a little bit of the background. What this sort of column of light looks like. How I got this information, that sort of thing. All right,
Hmm.
so then basically I just said, okay, so how do we design our lives? Where do we even start?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so they're like, well, you first have to determine all of these things. And this is the process. And this is why, it takes a while. And there's so many people that you call in. All right. So the first thing we have to do is determine like our desired sort of trajectory, if you will, of growth, our level of consciousness, and then, our level of enlightenment. Like how woke do you want to be, people? And so when a soul decides that it's ready to return to Earth, first, like I said, we meet with our guides because we just want to do it all. And the guides are like, no,
Tone it down.
yes. And these guides also, some of them have been with us for all of our lifetimes, many lifetimes.
Hmm.
But then we also connect with new guides who sort of bring like a new special skill to the table. So if I want to come into this life as a doctor or my next life as a doctor, I would have, maybe a guide that helps guide doctors.
Sure. Hmm.
We also meet with a council of our elders or master teachers who help with the process of determining what our new lessons will be this time on earth, because and how those new lessons will assist the soul in the best way possible. So I have a group of beings that I call the council, and there's three of them,
Hmm.
and they've been my spirit guides for a couple years now, like maybe 3 or 4 years. They're very hands off. It's like they're like you said, they're more of like a council of elders, but
Uh-huh.
they show up um in the city of souls whenever, which is like a soul retrieval sort of energy.
Hmm.
um
Hmm.
and they show up there as like judges, but they're not judgy. But
I
so
know what you mean. Hmm.
yeah, so those elders, it just we all have this council of elders, but
Okay.
I don't think it's the same guides. All right, so the next thing you have to do, after you've met with all those, you have to determine your personal expression of your soul based on the desired growth and level of consciousness achieved. Okay, now again, I'm reminding everybody that this is a channel. And so I just typed what came through. Now I am ad-libbing some things, I'm explaining other things, but when you hear me talk like that, like must determine the personal expression of your soul, that's the channel that came through from these
Okay.
higher guides.
Hmm.
All right. So basically, what that means is that's when where we use Vedic astrology, Vedic astrology. I don't know how you say it.
Vedic. Hmm.
Numerology, determining your life path, your expression, your purpose, all of that stuff. So that's what that
Hmm.
step means. You determine your numerology. And then the next step is determining the karmic debt and relationships that need to be balanced. The best way for that to happen. And then this is what they said. They said balance is achieved by perspective. Past life karma is looked at and evaluated. But we want you to understand that karma is not punitive. You must think of it like perspective. It is only when you have the perspective of both the perpetrator and the victim, the poor and the wealthy, the educated and the uneducated, can you truly understand the resulting words, thoughts, and actions of a soul's experiences as they depend on the soul's learned capabilities up to that point.
Hmm.
So that's what came through. Now, I totally understand all of that, but I want to go back over starting with the resulting words, thoughts, and actions of a soul's experiences as they depend on the soul's learned capabilities up to that point. Um, so basically, it's kind of like manifestation. Up to this point, if you've learned the way to manifest is by writing yourself a check to the universe and that's what
Hmm.
works for you, then that's great. But maybe in the next life, you say, okay, we need to do this deeper. What are the
Hmm.
learned capabilities? And so I'm assuming that that's what that means. So sometimes I don't understand what they say. Sometimes I do. Most times I do.
Yeah.
Okay. The next thing they say is determine the karmic lessons to be learned as a result of the like circumstances that you've experienced. So, again, if you've experienced many lifetimes as being extremely wealthy, now it's time to start experiencing lifetimes where maybe you experience poverty or lack or something like that.
Mm.
We need to determine the gender that best supports the lesson and growth desired. So, are we going to be male? Are we going to be female? Are we going to, be born into a male body, but then have the desires of a female so that we are trans? Or,
Hmm.
there's so many, and the way
Or
that
not adhere to either one. Yeah.
yes, exactly. And now with sexuality, being, there's such a, and I hate to call it a trend, but, just it's what's happening now is, being misgendered or non-gendered or all of those
Hmm.
things. It's just, there's just a lot more opportunities for souls to sort of take on that. That's why, I never understood why people get so pissed off and angry and judgy and biased and prejudiced about, you know, uh, gay or who cares.
Yeah. Right.
They're a freaking soul that's trying to learn a very specific lesson. So take your personal religious beliefs out of it and just look at that human being as a soul. Maybe
Yeah.
that is they're doing exactly what God wants them to do because they're learning how to overcome the challenge of being misgendered.
Yeah.
And so, who are you to jump on their shit about it and call them names
Hmm.
and all this stuff?
Judge them.
Because,
Hmm.
dude, in the next life, your ass is going to be the one who's got to be trans, and then we'll see how that karma works out
See
because
how you
karma is
like it.
perspective.
Hmm.
Anyway, I got a little mad about that.
No, I completely agree. No, 100%. And I know I've said this before, where I think that when people who don't identify with male or female to an extreme, maybe they feel like they're more centered. I feel like it's because it's a perfect balance of
Right.
both the masculine and the feminine energy, which I think there's like nothing but beauty in that. But you can look at it so many different ways, and yeah, you can look at it and be hateful about it. But I will say that I think anytime something triggers you or anchors you or just bothers you or whatever, and you can call it what you want to call it. You can say like, "Oh, it's because it's against God's blah blah blah," which is bullshit
It's
because you
bullshit.
don't know. You
No,
don't
you don't
know.
know. God didn't tell you that personally.
Yeah, exactly. And you can try to interpret some book written by men and say it says so right here, but
Hmm.
I will question the interpretations of that book. Anyway,
I'll write
I
something
would
on a
say
piece of paper. It says you're an asshole, and I'll say, "Well, it says right here
it
you're
says
an
it right here.
asshole."
It's written down right there. No. Um, I would say I think that it has something to do with
Yeah.
something
Oh,
internal
for
about
sure.
them, something
Absolutely.
that it's like it isn't a coincidence that people, specifically men who are homophobic, like incredibly homophobic, probably have some
Mhm.
homosexual tendencies themselves, and they're triggered
Mhm.
by someone acting out things that maybe don't seem possible for themselves.
Anger, shame, or whatever. And spirit
Uh-huh.
is non-gender anyway. There's no male spirit or female spirit. They're gender appearing specifically so that you can recognize them from a past life as a human. When you're in spirit, they don't present to each other anything but the energy that they are, that we are
Mhm.
as a
Mhm.
soul. So it really is it's an earth it's a human construct. Gender is a human construct, and it's
Mhm.
necessary for freaking reproduction. Like
Sure.
that's what it is. But that's it. That doesn't hold anybody to any rules.
Mhm.
Anyway, so yeah, it's just annoying to me when I like start thinking about it. It's like, but you determine the gender that best supports the lessons and growth desired.
Mhm.
All right. Then, once you've determined your gender, the next step is determine your mother and father that best supports the lessons and growth desired. Now, this is influenced also by the mother and father's desired growth, their lessons, their karmic debt, and any past life contracts that yet need to be fulfilled. Because people enter into contracts all the time that never get fulfilled. And so you
Mm.
have to look at those prior to your next incarnation and say, well, we didn't really complete this contract, and this is something that's necessary for both of our spiritual growth. We got to do it again.
Mm.
Um, so, for instance, like a poet born into a family of doctors is going to have a bigger challenge in really authentically expressing themselves as a poet,
Yep.
than if they were born into a family of poets. And the same
Mhm.
goes for a doctor that's born into a family of addicts is going to have a different experience,
Yeah.
socioeconomical, opportunity, all of that stuff. Well, unless they're rich addicts, which then it's going to be
Mhm.
something completely different too. So
Sure.
there's just all these different variations that could be potential.
Mhm.
Now, the one thing that I want to say is a lot of people, non-woo people, you see this mostly in Facebook timelines where, keyboard warriors have to weigh in. They think I would, they were abused, had horrible lives, physical, mental, emotional, sexual abuse. And they're like, I would never choose that for myself. And it's like, all right, well, I'm not going to argue with you. Then,
Sure.
then you wouldn't. Okay. And,
Mhm.
when they learn that that is a part of the incarnation process, it's going to be probably in a different life, in a different body, with a different experience. And I'm not going to be the one to be like, I told you so. You know what I mean? Like, who cares?
No, just figure it out.
You
You'll
just
figure it out
have
one
your
day, maybe.
belief.
Yeah.
All right. The next thing you need to determine is the physical body that best supports the lessons and growth desired. Some bodies may have challenges associated with them, and this choice is discussed with your spirit guides. You may also choose to experience like a major injury, illness, disease, physical disability, etc., because the effort required, they said, to overcome a physical disability actually accelerates a soul's evolution or a spiritual evolution. There are also souls who volunteer to have fatal illnesses, to be helped by someone, or to come to an abrupt end of life. Now, this is in order to help advance another's purpose or life path. Much like last week, we talked about your dad, who
Mhm.
his injuries helped advance another person's life path,
Yeah.
or soul purpose. And so that is something that actually that people come to think of. Now, I know, for me, my challenges with excess weight are direct relation to a past life that I had as a prostitute. And so that's
Oh.
another one of the reasons that I have such a difficult time maintaining any sort of significant weight loss, and also I have a difficult time, like I just said earlier, that when I get to a certain point in my weight loss journey and then I just lose interest and stop, it's all
Mhm.
tied to that past life as a prostitute. But for the life of me, I can't goddamn get to the root of it.
Mhm.
So that's
Mhm.
that's one that I plan to take into quantum hypnosis at some point.
Yeah.
And maybe I won't need to. Maybe it'll just go away or something. I have no idea, but it's one of my biggest challenges, and it's rooted in a past life. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And you and I have talked about that a little bit about how um with empaths it's common, but also with women who have experienced um, sexual trauma
yes,
to carry extra weight
yes,
because it's almost like a protection.
yep,
It's a barrier. It's a way of keeping themselves safe from that happening again.
yep, yes. So that past life as a prostitute, then also compounded by my current life as a child victim of a sexual abuse. That just those two together, they're just they're a mind fuck. And
Yeah.
trying to get past that, it hasn't been a huge priority in my spiritual evolution because I've been developing my abilities and all that stuff. But
Hmm. Hmm.
there is coming a point where it's going to be sort of the final frontier. And I'm
Yeah.
not afraid of it or whatever. I mean, but it's gonna be nice to finally get to the root of it and shed it, because it's like, Jesus Christ, it causes so much inner bullshit turmoil. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a spiritual lesson. Okay, let's see. The next determination that must be made is determining the geographic location that best supports the lessons and growth desired.
Mhm.
Some souls are drawn back to a certain geographic area, either a new one or one where they had a life before. So if you're
Mhm.
drawn to a specific region, like I'm super drawn to like Greece, I'm super drawn to like Central America, it's because typically you've had very happy or good, lives there. So that tends
Okay.
to be, or it feels more like people in all of the research and in all of the books that I've read on this topic, people typically, yeah, my legs are tingling. Thank you, Spirit. So that's my validation. Like, I have zero desire to ever go to any sort of Asian countries. There's nothing against Asians or anything like that, because Asian food is my favorite. Um,
Hmm.
it's just I have no desire to travel there. I don't care about seeing the sights. And so it's I probably had an unhappy past life there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um we talked about also in episode 32, the choice of geographic location is also influenced by soul age. um, we talked about how infant souls tend to incarnate in more primitive locations.
Right.
Young
I
souls
remember you
tend to
said this.
incarnate in more prosperous countries, and those old souls choose more progressive countries. And it's just because
Mm.
those are the countries that, or the geographic locations, the lifestyles, that sort of thing, that support that specific incarnation.
Yeah.
We are meant to determine the primary relationships that best support the lessons and growth desired. So that means our family, our friends, our romantic partners, our children, our coworkers, etc. And that's sort of fun, but that's where we get to. They say you can't pick your family, but you can. But also
Hmm.
you get to pick your friends,
But
right?
you can't.
So
You just forget that you do.
yeah.
You just
But
forget that you picked them.
and that's when people say, I would never. It's like, well, but you
Right.
would.
I would say it's that you pick them for a different reason.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, your friends, you pick because, you know, you're happy around them or you learn something from them in a good way. Like it's a positive
Yeah.
thing. And sometimes the relationships with family can be some of the most difficult relationships. But again, that goes back to how much the soul can learn from that interaction.
Yes.
As great as a happy and loving positive connection is, which is all wonderful, and I'm sure you can learn from it, the biggest lessons sometimes come from the hardest
Absolutely.
trials, the hardest experiences. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
That's absolutely true. The most like you said, the biggest levels of growth come from the most challenging situations.
Mhm.
And like, I just don't think people should beat themselves up for it. Because even though you have that knowledge, like with my relationship with my mom, it's literally it's my most challenging relationship. And, I'm challenged by forgiveness, but I'm not going to beat myself up or, tell myself that, well, you're going to have to repeat this relationship and you're going to, you know, all that. I'm not going to freak myself out like, oh, I'm not doing
Yeah.
it right. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
that's just as bad. So we do what we can, what we're capable of,
Yeah.
and we eventually get past those challenges.
Yeah, and we give ourselves grace
Yes.
if we decide no, if we decide, you know what, this lesson, I'll just take care of it in the next life, whatever,
Right.
free will,
Worry about
right?
that
I
later.
mean, fuck it.
It's true. And honestly, also, almost all difficult relationships, if somebody has a loved one who passed over and they are the cause of the difficult relationship, and I like to think that I'm not the cause of this difficult but but I digress. The point is that the spirits always come through regretful, remorseful. I'm so sorry. I wasn't the greatest
Mm,
parent. I should have done better. That sort of thing, right?
yeah,
And so a soul knows its part in it. Um, and even if you are, it takes two to tango. But
right.
sometimes, one soul is just really um, the one that needs to learn the lesson, the bigger lesson. You know what I mean?
Right, right. Yeah, exactly. And sometimes the lesson is cutting that person out
Yes.
and declaring no, no more. You can't steal my energy anymore. I won't let you hurt me anymore. And that's that.
Right.
Sometimes the lesson is that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not
Boundaries.
to say, yeah, boundaries
Mm-hmm.
or even
For
forgiveness. But
for
forgiveness doesn't mean you
yourself.
have to have yeah, exactly, for
Yeah.
yourself. Not
Mm-hmm.
saying I forgive you, let's have a relationship.
Mm-mm.
It's I forgive you so I don't carry this around, but also I don't want a relationship with you.
Right.
And that's it.
Absolutely, 100%. It's so many different things. Um, my uncle posted something the other day, and it was, how families need to stop the bickering at Christmas time and, come together and love one another. And I
Hmm.
was like, oh. And normally I don't comment on my uncle's post because, one day he'll post something. He's a Spartan, a Michigan State Spartan, right? So he'll post something, and then the next day he'll post something in support of Michigan, the University of Michigan. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? No, we don't do that. So one day he'll post something in support of, Joe Biden, and the next day he'll post something in support of Trump. And I'm like, dude, you're doing the social media thing wrong.
Make up your mind.
Make up your mind. So I don't really like
Pick a side.
not with my uncle. I love him. He's my uncle. He can do no wrong. Um,
Yeah.
but I was like, all right, I'm not gonna yell at him for posting this or anything. But I was like, I was like, sometimes I took this as a passive aggressive opportunity to be passive aggressive, not to him.
Uh-huh.
It said, sometimes the parent needs to take responsibility for blah blah blah. So,
Right.
um, all right. Anyway, that was a tangent.
Related tangent.
We needed that. The next step is to determine the catalytic connections, interactions, and relationships that best support the lessons and growth desired. Um,
Yeah.
so, people come into your life, they create this energy or this catalytic situation that propels you
Mhm.
into another direction, keeping you aligned with your soul blueprint and on track.
Yeah.
You need to determine what those happen, what those are. They could be friendships, they
Mhm.
could be family, they could, marriage, divorce, falling out with friends, firing of a, that sort of thing. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, we need to determine the major life events that best support the lessons and growth desired, which are different than catalytic connections, interacts, and relationships in this way. So basically, they say, here, this is a channel. For each determination that supports the lessons and growth desired, you must also determine optional decisions and outcomes based on free will. For example, if your decision to move across the country is the fastest and most joyful path to your desired outcome, but due to free will, the soul is afraid to leave behind all they have ever known, an alternative course of action must be planned within the soul blueprint that also leads to the desired outcome.
Hmm.
No path is wrong, and all lead to what is meant for you. The path of least resistance is the most desirable to the soul planning their own blueprint, but the human is the one who has the free will to change course along the way. Often, this is done subconsciously due to fear or shadow programming that is yet to be healed from past lives or early childhood experiences. When
Hmm.
knowingly, let's see, all right, so I know I missed a word there, but basically, when we knowingly choose to be directed by our fears, it breaks a contract with your higher self. And in order to realign with your soul blueprint, you must renew your contract by realigning with your higher self and radically accepting and surrendering all resistance to the path before you.
Wow.
Deep, deep shit by Jack Handy. Anyway, so yeah, that is basically when determining the major life events. And I love that they brought in that part about free will,
Yeah.
because it's like, yeah, when they say no path is wrong and all lead to what is meant for you. Um, and also, I also think I love that they used the example of moving across country, which is what I did. But I will tell you, I was never afraid of it. Like, I've known my ever since I was like in my 20s that I wanted
Hmm.
to move, and I was always afraid of moving. Oh, I won't be able
Hmm.
to see my nieces and nephew grow up. I won't be able to, I'll miss my friends and all that stuff.
Yeah.
With the day that I decided that I was moving, it was just like, "Oh, I'm moving." That's
Hmm.
it. It was done. It was a done deal. And from
Hmm.
that point forward, any thought of not doing it was gut-wrenching. So
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes you just have to wait for those shifts to happen, and
Hmm.
that's written into your soul blueprint.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how I think that's how I felt about being a mom. Like I
Ah.
always knew that I wanted to have children. I knew. And yeah, and when I found myself pregnant for the first time, I was not I was not ever afraid of like, what if I'm not a good parent, or like
Mm-mm,
what if I'm not this, or what if I can't provide, or what if that those thoughts never crossed my
mm-mm.
mind. That just wasn't a thing. It was like,
No. Well,
yeah.
also too, you had found that partner to do that with,
Mhm.
so you had a solid partner.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I knew that the person I was having a baby with was a more than capable father.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that yeah. But
Mhm.
but
It just you just knew. You knew that
yeah,
was a
you
part of
just knew.
your soul blueprint. You knew what you were supposed to do, and you're like, okay, this is what we're doing.
Yep. Yeah.
Because if I ever found myself with baby, I'd be freaking out. So,
And I know a lot of people do. And then
mhm,
I also know those that a lot of people are like, I just never that I never saw that for myself,
yeah,
or that's not something that I ever thought I wanted to do.
hmm,
And I get that.
yeah,
I get both sides of that. I understand.
yeah, yeah. Very cool. Very cool how the how our higher self just sort of is. I wish that that our lower selves, that's who we are, we could pivot and just practice radical acceptance as easily as the higher self does.
I know. Radical acceptance is the key to self-confidence.
Girl, and you know what? Lower, in a few minutes, we're going to talk about that a little bit more because we're going to talk more in depth about radical acceptance in a future episode in this Life Between Life series. Let's see. Okay, so the next thing that you have to do is create contracts with your spirit guides to help you stay aligned with the spiritual goals you have set for your current earth life. So earlier today, I was working with one of my intuitive development one-on-one students, and I explained this to her, and so this is the easiest way to explain it. With intuitive development, the primary spirit guide that you need to focus on is your higher self. It's not your spirit guides.
Mm-hmm.
They are there to help you stay aligned. Their operations, they are behind the scenes, their management, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
there to help you stay aligned with your soul blueprint. Your higher self, that's the person. That's what who psychics hear. Yes, you can hear loved ones who passed over. We can hear other spirits, but why I'm, I guess, for lack of a better term, a successful intuitive is because I have a direct connection and a language and a trust in my higher self. Once you get
Mm.
that, everything else just falls into place. So you have to create contracts with those spirit guides to help you stay aligned with the spiritual goals. Now, you also have to create contracts with members of other soul groups, with members of your soul group, with members of your soul family, and then with any of those specialty spirit guides to help you align with the growth and spiritual goals that you've set for yourself. So there's a lot of networking and contracting and discussions, and it's interesting how it all comes together.
Yeah.
And when they showed me this, it really, it does, it looks like a cocktail party. Like, there's all these high top tables, people standing
Hmm.
around and talking about, well, how are you going to do this, how are you going to maneuver this, this trip to Portland, with the dog and everything. And then it's like, I will make a contract with my future niece and see if she'll come with me, and you know what I mean. So
Hmm. Hmm.
stuff like that. There's a lot that goes into the planning of your earth life. But the one thing that they want us to know is that, however, and we'll touch on free will again, many details are determined in real time. So it's sort of like an outline. Your soul blueprint is an outline. There are details
Sure.
that will play out because they're critical to the next phase and the next phase. But
Hmm.
much of it is also based on your thoughts, words, actions, choices. And so, like any plan, you have to remain flexible and willing to take risks, and have faith and trust in all of those things. So
Yeah.
that's one of the inherent gifts of being human, is that you have to learn,
Yeah.
trust and faith and all that stuff. And as you touched on earlier, this is where the skill of radical acceptance becomes an invaluable tool to help reprogram the subconscious, just like you said, in developing and in nurturing that shadow work.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
And again, we're going to talk more in depth about that. I'm going to do a future episode on radical acceptance, which actually I think that would be a fun episode to do, like a co-episode, and talking about how that
Yeah.
works with shadow work.
Yeah. For sure.
Yay. Okay, so so those are all of the things that must be determined in order to create your soul blueprint and move you into the next life. So just to wrap it up, what they sort of showed me was, they said that once the details of your life have been completed, and I do that with air quotes because again, it's never fully completed. um, it results in this blueprint. Okay, now here's where it
Hmm.
got super freaking cool. I was like, shut up. um, the resulting blueprint is then, they showed me that it was embedded onto like this dark blue piece of metal that was maybe like 6 inches by like 4 inches. Okay.
Okay.
And this dark blue metal plate is sort of what it was. It was then programmed with all of the details, all of the contracts, everything. And it was synced up with the crystal. It was like slid into the crystal and it synced up. And that crystal is connected to all the other blueprints and existed in the Akashic records. And so they
How
tied
cool.
all of that together. It was so cool. And that's when I was like all like nerding out
Like a
and geeking out. I'm
like a floppy disk.
like a floppy. Yes, like a freaking floppy disk.
My kids have no idea what the hell that is, by the way.
No, nobody know, right? So they just said, to sort of wrap it up, they're like, okay, so like the process of determining the details of your earth life is much more technical than we can imagine. And this cycle continues for years, for thousands of years, as we gradually gain sort of the wisdom and the depth of experience and the spiritual and mental and emotional growth. And so that's sort of, sort of a summary, if you will, of the phase of choosing your next incarnation. It's much more technical than we would think.
Yeah. That's a lot of stuff.
Wasn't it? I felt so blessed that I got to like see all that stuff firsthand because of course I also got the visuals too.
Yeah,
Very very cool.
that's awesome. Thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. Do you have anything for the closing vibe?
I do. I just had a quick recommendation. I listened to this podcast episode of Hidden Brain, which is I believe it's an NPR show. But it's called The Psychology of Self-Doubt, and they interviewed this psychologist who he's an expert on imposter syndrome. He actually
Mm-hmm.
he likes to refer to it as imposter phenomenon. But in his studies, he's found that the most successful people throughout history have felt this imposter phenomenon. He's talked about Michelle Obama. He's talked about Albert Einstein, and how there's a couple of things that stood out to me, like the fact that um, when he went into the experiments, they were talking. They had this assumption that they thought that maybe women might feel more prone to feeling imposter syndrome than men, but in his work, that's not true. It's
Right.
both.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's true for both men and women in equal amounts. I would say I what I thought about that though was that I think us women maybe are have a more probability to be more vocal about it, or maybe more like even just female presenting people um have a you just talk more, you're just more chatty and more willing to talk about your emotions, whereas someone who's more male identifying would, especially if you're part of the patriarchy and all that, you've had those ideologies ingrained in you that you can't express your
Yep.
emotions as much. So that's probably why like we have that preconception about it, but that isn't necessarily true. But the most interesting thing that I took away from it was that the fact that these super successful people who we would necessarily never think that they would feel this way, like even like Tom Hanks
Dude,
talks
like
about it.
Michelle Obama, like that she has not one thing to be. You know what I mean? Imagine Michelle
Uh,
Obama being not
right.
confident.
Yeah, but she talks about how she's not sure, like, if she should be here, if she's worthy of being here, if she's worthy of doing this, if she was worthy of being the first lady, of her body type, of all
Oh
this
God, yeah, she
shit,
has a
all these things,
stunning body.
because yeah, because it's all social constructs and all this stuff, and then also racism too, because she's a black woman,
Yeah,
and so yes. Um, People in the BIPOC community are more prone to feeling this imposter syndrome, but it's not exclusive to BIPOC people. Everyone feels it. But what I took away from it was that this imposter syndrome thing doesn't have to be a hindrance to your success. People use it, and the way that they utilize it, it drives them further to do better, to be better, because they feel like they have this innate need to prove themselves to other people, but most importantly to themselves.
mm,
And as long as you can strike a balance between getting or working to the point where you can get over that imposter syndrome, where you've shown it to yourself, like, no, like I'm fully capable of this, um, and the balance between that and your mental health, of course, that you can overcome it and you can be successful despite it, or you can integrate it and actually be successful because of it,
yeah,
because it's a driving force behind your success. So I thought that was just a beautiful thing.
yeah. It's very cool. It's very cool, and it's funny because when I talk to people about their soul blueprint, or I do an akashic reading on them, and they're like, "Well, I want to do this thing, but." Right?
Hmm.
Everybody, I want to do this, I want to do that, but there's always these buts. But what those buts are similar many times. If when we get in there and I'm like, well, let's break those down,
Hmm.
always, always, always pops up. who am I to be doing this? I'm not ready. I don't have the training. Who am I to turn around? And, so it's imposter syndrome and it's
Right.
prevalent. So I'm glad more people are talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's actual research and stuff going on behind it
Yes,
too. So,
which is cool because you would think that more people that were female identifying would have that issue, but
yeah. It's
of
everyone.
all the people that you asked me, Michelle Obama would not be somebody that was on my list. I'm like, no, she knows. She knows.
Viola Davis.
Ugh.
Viola Davis is on there. It's like,
Oh my
I
goodness.
she's I would say she's probably the greatest actress
Yeah.
of all time. I
She's
would
yours.
say, yeah.
She's yours.
Oh, easy, easy. Yeah, she's phenomenal.
I
Yeah,
don't
but
even
even
know
she
my
gets it. She
greatest.
says it too. So, yeah.
I don't even know who my greatest actress or um, actor would be. I don't even know. I have
Think
to
about
think about
it.
that. Okay, well, you guys, thank you for joining us today. You can find us on all the socials under Esoterics Podcast, and be sure to join our Facebook community, the Esoterics Group, where you can hear firsthand about our services, events, and courses, and as well as get all sorts of fun tips and tricks and card pulls and memes and maybe some free meditations in 2022. So lots more.
Yep. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend. It would mean the world to us. It's as easy as sharing a screenshot on your Insta stories or Facebook stories and just tagging us. We love to share those. We want to thank you for sharing space with us today. Stay mystical, magical, and ready to do it again next year because this is the end of season 1.
It is
So
the
we want to
finale.
thank you guys so much for all your
Oh
support this
my
whole season.
God.
And we're going to take a break and
Yep.
come back refreshed and ready to give you some more insightful content in the new year.
Yes. Thank you so much. Literally. So we did 36 episodes, and we can't promise that each season will have 36 episodes, right? But when we started this, we just wanted to do it, right? We would get together and just laugh and talk, and we were ridiculous, and we're like, let's do a podcast, right? Maybe we didn't care if anybody listened, but you guys are crazy, and in Meredith, actually, from the Girls Media, she was actually telling me that she's like loves checking the stats. We hit number 75 in spirituality, and she said now people will start seeing us.
Awesome.
Yes. And
Yay.
so the more people the more that you listen and the more that you help share and all those things, like it just propels us more. But all of that is nothing because we just are so grateful that we're just grateful
Yes.
that anybody listens, and we just love doing this. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Yay.
All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.